She called 911 to report her own murder. The brilliant scientist lay dead while her killer's voice echoed through police dispatch, claiming a man was attacking her neighbor. For 10 years, that lie protected a jealous coworker who thought she'd committed the perfect crime, until another knife revealed the voice that had fooled everyone. Sometimes the witness is the killer. Before we get into the story, drop a comment with your country and the time right now. The morning sun filtered through Anna Lisa Raymundo's apartment blinds, casting long shadows across the hardwood floors of Harbor Landing. At 32, she moved through her morning routine with the same disciplined grace that had carried her from Harvard to Purdue Pharma's research labs. Coffee brewed while she reviewed molecular structures on her laptop, her mind already immersed in the day's experiments. Harbor Landing represented everything Stamford's affluent families sought: manicured lawns, quiet streets, and the kind of safety that money promised. Neighbors knew each other by sight, children rode bicycles without fear, and the most serious crime reports involved stolen packages. Anna Lisa had chosen this sanctuary deliberately, seeking peace after years of academic pressure. Her relationship with Nira Ghulam remained discreet. As colleagues at Purdue Pharma, they maintained professional boundaries during work hours, but their connection ran deeper than laboratory partnerships. Nira understood her scientific passion, her quiet ambition, and her need for intellectual conversation that stretched beyond molecular formulas. The neighbors noticed Anna Lisa's consistency, her car departing at exactly 7:45 each morning, returning around 6 each evening. Mrs. Patterson from 3B often commented on her politeness, always holding elevator doors and offering genuine smiles. The building's security guard appreciated her quiet nature, never hosting loud parties or creating disturbances. Anna Lisa checked her watch. 7:30 a.m. Time to leave for another day of research that might someday help people heal. She gathered her laptop bag, locked her apartment door, and stepped into a November morning that felt crisp with possibility. The elevator descended smoothly, carrying her toward a day she would never complete. At 12:08 p.m., the Stamford Emergency Dispatch Center received a call that would haunt investigators for years. The voice belonged to a woman, breathless and panicked, but something felt wrong from the first word. "There's a man attacking someone," the caller gasped. "Please send help." The dispatcher, trained to recognize genuine distress, sensed something artificial in the panic. The woman's breathing seemed controlled despite her apparent terror. Her words came too clearly, too organized for someone witnessing violence. "Ma'am, what's your location?" the dispatcher asked. The caller provided Anna Lisa's address in Harbor Landing, then added details that seemed oddly specific, descriptions of sounds and movements that suggested close proximity to the supposed attack. "Is the victim conscious?" the dispatcher pressed. I don't know. Just send someone." The line went dead. The dispatcher immediately flagged the call as suspicious. Genuine witnesses usually stayed on the line, desperate for guidance. This caller seemed eager to disconnect once basic information was delivered. The dispatcher noted the call duration, 43 seconds, just long enough to establish a male attacker and provide the address. Something else bothered the dispatcher. The caller's voice carried an educated accent, professional and articulate. Most panic calls dissolved into fractured sentences and raw emotion. This woman maintained linguistic control even while claiming to witness brutal violence. The emergency response protocols engaged automatically. Police units received the dispatch: domestic violence in progress, male suspect, possible injuries. The responding officers had no reason to question the caller's gender or motives. They raced toward Harbor Landing, expecting to find a man standing over his victim. Officer Martinez arrived first at 12:20 p.m., followed immediately by his partner, Officer Chen. The apartment building's lobby appeared normal. No signs of struggle, no fleeing suspects. They rode the elevator to the 4th floor, hands resting on their weapons but not drawn. The apartment door stood slightly ajar. Officer Martinez pushed it open and immediately called for backup. Anna Lisa Raymundo lay on her living room floor, surrounded by blood that had begun to darken against the hardwood. Multiple stab wounds marked her chest and neck, while blunt force trauma suggested a sustained attack. Her Harvard diploma hung crookedly on the nearby wall, as if the violence had shaken the entire room. The crime scene contradicted everything they expected: no forced entry, no signs of robbery. Her purse sat untouched on the kitchen counter, credit cards and cash undisturbed. Her laptop remained open, still displaying molecular research. Whoever killed Anna Lisa had come for violence, not valuables. Detective Sullivan arrived within 30 minutes, his experienced eyes scanning the scene for stories that blood and disruption told. The attack appeared personal, too many wounds for a quick robbery, too intimate for random violence. The killer had known Anna Lisa well enough to gain entry without force. Forensic photographers documented every detail, while Detective Sullivan reconstructed the morning's events. Anna Lisa's coffee mug still held lukewarm liquid, suggesting she had returned from work or never left. Her work clothes appeared professional but not defensive. She hadn't expected danger. The most troubling element was the anonymous call. If a man had attacked Anna Lisa, where was he? No male DNA presented itself in preliminary searches. No male clothing fibers. No masculine footprints in the blood patterns. Detective Sullivan recognized the staging. Someone wanted police to believe a man had committed this murder. The 911 call was misdirection, designed to send investigators chasing shadows while the real killer disappeared into legitimate society. Detective Sullivan began with the closest relationships. Nira Ghulam received the call at Purdue Pharma, where his immediate collapse convinced everyone watching that his grief was genuine. The detective drove to the laboratory personally, observing Nira's reaction to news of Anna Lisa's death. "I saw her yesterday," Nira whispered, his voice breaking. She was excited about her research. Someone from the FDA was reviewing her work for possible clinical trials. Nira's hands shook as he described their relationship. Professional colleagues who had discovered personal compatibility. They kept their romance quiet to avoid office gossip, but several coworkers knew they spent time together outside the laboratory. "Did she mention feeling threatened?" Detective Sullivan asked. "Anyone showing unusual interest or jealousy?" Nira shook his head. Anna Lisa was careful about boundaries. Professional. People respected her because she earned it. The detective confirmed Nira's alibi through security cameras and colleague testimonies. Purdue Pharma's electronic badge system showed Nira entering the building at 7:52 a.m. and remaining inside until Detective Sullivan's call. Laboratory security cameras captured him working steadily through the morning, never leaving his research station. Dr. Peterson, Anna Lisa's department head, described her as brilliant but humble. She collaborated well with colleagues, never created interpersonal drama, and maintained appropriate professional relationships. The idea that someone would want to hurt her seemed incomprehensible. She was the kind of scientist who made everyone around her better, Dr. Peterson explained. No ego, just genuine curiosity about solving problems. Detective Sullivan noted the consistency. Everyone described Anna Lisa as someone who avoided conflict, earned respect through competence, and treated colleagues with kindness. The killer wasn't responding to any provocation or professional rivalry. During interviews at Purdue Pharma, one name emerged quietly but persistently: Sheila Devalu. Colleagues mentioned her as someone close to both Anna Lisa and Nira, a fellow researcher who often joined their lunch conversations and seemed particularly interested in their work. Sheila asked a lot of questions, Dr. Martinez recalled, always wanting to know about Anna Lisa's projects, her schedule, her meetings with department heads. Another colleague, Dr. Roberts, remembered Sheila's comments about Anna Lisa's success. She mentioned how quickly Anna Lisa was advancing, how the FDA seemed impressed with her research. It felt like professional envy, but nothing unusual for a competitive environment. Detective Sullivan located Sheila in Building C, where she worked on pharmaceutical testing protocols. She appeared composed, professional, and appropriately shocked by news of Anna Lisa's death. "This is terrible," Sheila said, her voice steady. "Anna Lisa was such a dedicated scientist. Who would want to hurt her?" the detective noted, Sheila's controlled demeanor. While other colleagues showed visible distress, Sheila maintained professional composure that seemed almost rehearsed. Her questions focused on investigation details rather than expressing grief. "Do you have any leads?" Sheila asked. "I heard someone saw a man leaving the building." Detective Sullivan hadn't mentioned any witnesses. Sheila's assumption about male involvement aligned suspiciously with the anonymous caller's claims. "Where were you this morning?" he asked. "I took a personal day," Sheila replied quickly, "dealing with some family matters." Her explanation seemed prepared, delivered without the hesitation of someone reconstructing their morning. Detective Sullivan made notes about her immediate availability of an alibi and her apparent knowledge of details not yet released publicly. The anonymous 911 call became the investigation's central mystery and greatest misdirection. Detective Sullivan played the recording repeatedly, analyzing tone, word choice, and background sounds. The caller's panic seemed performed rather than genuine, too articulate for someone witnessing brutal violence. Audio technicians enhanced the recording, filtering background noise and isolating the caller's voice. They detected no sounds of actual violence, no screaming, no struggle, no male voices. The woman appeared to be alone when she made the call. The timing troubled Detective Sullivan. The call came at 12:08 p.m., but the medical examiner estimated Anna Lisa's death occurred between 11:30 and 11:45 a.m. The anonymous caller had waited nearly 30 minutes before reporting the supposed attack. Linguistic experts analyzed the caller's speech patterns. Despite claiming panic, she used complete sentences, proper grammar, and sophisticated vocabulary. Her accent suggested education and professional background inconsistent with a frightened witness stumbling upon violence. This caller knew exactly what she wanted to report, the linguistics expert concluded. Her word choices were calculated to establish male involvement while deflecting attention from female suspects. Detective Sullivan recognized the tactical sophistication. The caller provided just enough detail to trigger emergency response, but not enough to support investigation. She mentioned seeing a man but couldn't describe him. She heard violence but couldn't specify locations or weapons. The investigation shifted toward finding the anonymous caller, but without advanced voice-matching technology, identification seemed impossible. The case began its slow descent toward cold status, hampered by misdirection that sent detectives searching for a male killer who never existed. Harbor Landing's peace never fully recovered. Neighbors installed additional security systems, and evening dog walks became more cautious affairs. Months passed like November rain, steady, gray, and cold. Detective Sullivan kept Anna Lisa's case file on his desk, refusing to let it disappear into the basement archives where unsolved murders went to die. Every few weeks, he would open the folder, reread witness statements, and study crime scene photographs with fresh eyes. The Stamford community gradually absorbed the reality that Anna Lisa's killer might never face justice. Local newspapers moved on to current crimes, and Harbor Landing's residents learned to live with unanswered questions. The building's security guards still mentioned Anna Lisa occasionally, wondering aloud if her family would ever know the truth. Anna Lisa's parents visited Stamford twice, meeting with Detective Sullivan and walking through their daughter's apartment building. Their grief had calcified into patient endurance, the kind of quiet pain that families of unsolved murder victims carry indefinitely. "We just want to know why," her mother said during their second visit. Anna Lisa never hurt anyone. She dedicated her life to helping people through her research. Detective Sullivan made promises he wasn't certain he could keep. The case file grew thinner each month as other investigations demanded attention. New murders, active leads, and crimes with viable suspects took priority over a case built on circumstantial evidence and an anonymous phone call. By late 2003, Anna Lisa Raymundo had joined the ranks of cold cases murders that haunted investigators but offered no clear paths toward resolution. The anniversary of her death passed quietly, marked only by a small memorial service and Detective Sullivan's renewed commitment to finding her killer. The silence felt permanent until another knife shattered it completely. In March 2003, Stamford police responded to a domestic violence call that would resurrect Anna Lisa's case in the most unexpected way. Paul Christos lay bleeding in his bedroom, multiple stab wounds marking his chest and arms, while his wife Sheila Davalou claimed they had been playing a game that went wrong. "We were role-playing," Sheila explained to paramedics, her voice steady despite her husband's condition. "He likes adventure, and I guess I got carried away." Paul Christos told a different story from his hospital bed. The game had been Sheila's idea, presented as romantic fantasy but escalating into genuine violence. She had used a kitchen knife with calculated precision, targeting non-fatal areas while maintaining enough force to cause serious injury. "She wasn't playing," Paul whispered to Detective Rodriguez. "Her eyes were cold, like she was testing something." The attack's methodical nature disturbed investigators. Sheila had inflicted significant damage while avoiding major arteries, suggesting knowledge of anatomy and careful planning disguised as spontaneous roleplay. Her explanation seemed rehearsed, delivered with professional composure, inappropriate for someone whose husband nearly died. Detective Sullivan learned about the case through departmental briefings and immediately recognized the behavioral pattern. The calculated violence, the false narrative, the attempt to frame events as something other than premeditated, attack all elements that echoed Anna Lisa's murder. He requested copies of Sheila Davalou's file and discovered she worked at Purdue Pharma. The name triggered immediate recognition. Sheila had been among the colleagues interviewed after Anna Lisa's death, the woman who seemed unusually interested in investigation details. The connection felt too significant for coincidence. Detective Sullivan began reconstructing Sheila's relationship with both Anna Lisa and Nira Ghulam. Detective Sullivan's investigation into Sheila Davolu revealed a woman skilled at maintaining multiple identities. At work, she appeared professional and collaborative. At home, she presented herself as a devoted wife. But beneath these facades lay patterns of deception and control that had escalated into violence. Paul Christos provided crucial insights during follow-up interviews. Sheila had shown obsessive interest in her coworkers, particularly asking about Nira Ghulam's schedule and relationships. She would return home from work with detailed stories about office dynamics, focusing especially on Anna Lisa's research success and her growing closeness with Nira. She talked about them constantly, Paul recalled. Anna Lisa this, Nira that. It felt like she was more invested in their relationship than her own. Phone records from November 8, 2002, showed Sheila had called in sick to work the same day Anna Lisa was murdered. When Detective Sullivan requested her detailed whereabouts, Sheila's explanations became vague and contradictory. I was running errands, she claimed. Maybe I went shopping. It's hard to remember specific details from so long ago. Her inability to provide concrete details contrasted sharply with most people's ability to recall their activities during significant news events. Detective Sullivan noted that Anna Lisa's murder had dominated local news for weeks, making November 8th memorable for most Stamford residents. Security footage from local businesses showed no record of Sheila's presence anywhere during the crucial morning hours. Her credit card remained unused, her phone GPS inactive, and her car's location untracked. The timeline created a window of opportunity that aligned perfectly with Anna Lisa's estimated time of death. Sheila had means, motive, and opportunity, but still no physical evidence connecting her directly to the crime scene. The investigation's breakthrough came from an unexpected source voice analysis technology that had advanced significantly since 2002. Detective Sullivan arranged for the anonymous 911 call to be compared against Sheila Davolu's recorded statements from her husband's stabbing case. Audio forensics expert Dr. Jennifer Walsh used sophisticated software to analyze vocal patterns, speech rhythms, and linguistic markers. The process took several weeks, comparing multiple samples of Sheila's voice against the anonymous caller's 43-second recording. The fundamental frequency patterns are remarkably similar, Dr. Walsh explained to Detective Sullivan. Even with attempted voice disguise, certain speech characteristics remain consistent. The analysis revealed matching cadence, vowel pronunciation, and grammatical structures. When Sheila tried to sound panicked during the 911 call, she maintained her natural speaking rhythm and professional vocabulary choices. This is the same speaker, Dr. Walsh concluded. The probability of error is less than 5%. The revelation transformed the investigation. The anonymous caller who had misdirected police toward a male suspect was Sheila Davolu herself. She had murdered Anna Lisa, then called 911 to establish a false timeline and suspect profile. Detective Sullivan obtained a court order to formally interview Sheila about the voice analysis results. Her reaction provided additional confirmation, immediate deflection, rather than surprise or curiosity. Voice analysis isn't perfect science, Sheila argued. Lots of people might sound similar on poor quality recordings. Her defensive response suggested guilty knowledge rather than innocent confusion. An innocent person would typically express shock at being connected to a murder case through voice evidence. The case against Sheila Davolu began solidifying, built on behavioral patterns, opportunity, and now technological evidence that connected her directly to the crime's aftermath. Detective Sullivan's investigation uncovered the psychological landscape that had driven Sheila to murder. Colleagues at Purdue Pharma, when re-interviewed with specific focus, revealed Sheila's obsessive interest in Nira Ghulam that had escalated throughout 2002. She would ask about his lunch plans, his project deadlines, even his vacation schedule, Dr. Martinez recalled. It seemed like friendly colleague interest until you saw the pattern. Sheila had created elaborate stories about her social life, including fictional characters named Melissa and Jack, who were supposedly involved in complex romantic situations. When colleagues analyzed these stories later, they realized Sheila was describing her own emotional triangle with Nira and Anna Lisa, using fictional names to process her real feelings. The Melissa character was always competing with another woman for Jack's attention, Dr. Roberts remembered. Sheila would describe their conflicts in detailed ways that felt too personal for fiction. Email records subpoenaed from Purdue Pharma's servers revealed Sheila's pattern of monitoring Anna Lisa's communications. She had volunteered for projects that put her close to Anna Lisa's work, offering to deliver messages and coordinate schedules in ways that gave her access to information about Anna Lisa's plans. Paul Christos provided the most disturbing insights. Sheila had pumped him for information about effective ways to enter buildings undetected, claiming she was researching security protocols for pharmaceutical facilities. She had also asked hypothetical questions about police investigation, procedures, and evidence collection. She said it was for a crime novel she was writing, Paul explained, but she never showed me any actual writing. The picture emerged of someone who had planned Anna Lisa's murder methodically, gathering intelligence and developing strategies to avoid detection while maintaining her professional facade. On September 15, 2009, Dr. Jennifer Walsh delivered her final voice analysis report to Detective Sullivan. Advanced audio enhancement technology had eliminated any remaining doubt about the anonymous 911 caller's identity. The vocal patterns, speech timing, and linguistic markers provide definitive identification. Dr. Walsh testified during the formal evidence review. Sheila Davalloo made that call. The revelation recontextualized every aspect of Anna Lisa's murder. The anonymous caller wasn't a witness, she was the killer, calling to establish a false narrative that would protect her from suspicion. She had murdered Anna Lisa, waited 30 minutes for the scene to stabilize, then called 911 to report a fictional male attacker. Local media seized on the breakthrough. Voice That Lead became the headline that defined renewed coverage of Anna Lisa's case. The Stamford community, which had resigned itself to an unsolved murder, suddenly faced the possibility that justice had only been delayed, not denied. Sheila's carefully constructed life began unraveling under renewed scrutiny. Neighbors recalled her odd behavior during the weeks following Anna Lisa's murder, her unexpected interest in police procedures, her questions about investigation timelines, and her apparent knowledge of details that hadn't been publicly released. The voice evidence transformed circumstantial suspicion into prosecutorial foundation. Detective Sullivan now had motive, opportunity, method, and technological proof connecting Sheila to the crime scene's aftermath. Public reaction was swift and intense. Comments on news articles expressed outrage that a killer had hidden in plain sight for nearly 7 years. The case became a symbol of how patience and technological advancement could resurrect cold cases that seemed permanently unsolved. Sheila's arrest became inevitable. The only remaining question was whether she would confess or force a trial that would expose every detail of her deception to public scrutiny. Detective Sullivan meticulously documented Sheila's obsession with Nira Ghulam through evidence that painted a disturbing picture of escalating fixation. Security footage from Purdue Pharma's parking lots showed Sheila frequently positioned where she could observe Nira's arrival and departure times. Coworkers described Sheila's habit of volunteering for assignments that placed her near Nira's laboratory. She would offer to deliver materials, coordinate meetings, and share project updates in ways that seemed helpful but created opportunities for extended interaction. She knew his schedule better than his secretary, Dr. Peterson observed, always appearing when he was working late, offering assistance with research that wasn't related to her own projects. Email forensics revealed Sheila's pattern of inserting herself into communications between Nira and Anna Lisa. She would copy herself on messages, volunteer to coordinate their joint projects, and offer to facilitate meetings that gave her access to information about their developing relationship. The most disturbing evidence came from Paul Christos, who described Sheila's behavior at home during late 2002. She would spend evenings researching Nira's background, his previous relationships, and his professional accomplishments. She had printed articles about his research, photos from company events, even his graduate school information, Paul recalled. When I asked about it, she said she was helping with a work project. Sheila had also begun questioning Paul about effective methods for tracking someone's movements without being detected. She claimed she was concerned about workplace security, but her questions focused specifically on following individuals rather than general facility protection. The evidence revealed someone whose professional competence masked dangerous obsession. Sheila had used her intelligence and organizational skills to study Nira systematically, identifying Anna Lisa as the primary obstacle to her imagined relationship. By 2010, prosecutor David Chen began assembling the case against Sheila Davalloo with methodical precision. The circumstantial evidence formed a web that grew stronger with each connection, motive, opportunity, deception, and voice identification, all pointing toward the same conclusion. The prosecution's timeline placed Sheila at the center of a carefully planned murder disguised as random violence. Her personal day from work on November 8, 2002, provided opportunity. Her obsession with Nira and jealousy of Anna Lisa established motive. Her voice on the anonymous 911 call proved her involvement in misdirecting the investigation. This wasn't a crime of passion, Prosecutor Chen explained during case preparation meeting. This was calculated elimination of perceived competition, followed by sophisticated efforts to avoid detection. The prosecution faced the challenge of building a murder case without physical evidence, no DNA, no fingerprints, no witnesses to the actual killing. Success would depend on demonstrating how Sheila's behavioral patterns, opportunity, and voice evidence created proof beyond reasonable doubt. Defense attorneys argued that circumstantial evidence couldn't support murder charges. They claimed Sheila's interest in Nira represented normal workplace friendship, her personal day was coincidental, and voice analysis remained imperfect science. Suspicion is not evidence, defense attorney Robert Martinez argued. The prosecution is asking you to convict someone based on assumptions and technological analysis that cannot account for human complexity. The legal battle would ultimately center on whether a jury could find certainty in debris, the accumulation of circumstantial proof. Each piece of evidence was vulnerable to alternative explanation, but together they formed a pattern that seemed to eliminate reasonable doubt. Media coverage intensified as trial preparation proceeded, with local news describing the case as jealousy turned lethal and when obsession becomes murder. On March 15, 2012, exactly 10 years and 4 months after Anna Lisa's murder, Sheila Davalloo was formally arrested and charged with first-degree murder. The arrest occurred at her home, where she maintained composure even as Detective Sullivan read the charges. "You're making a mistake," Sheila said calmly. "I had nothing to do with Anna Lisa's death." Her reaction provided one final piece of behavioral evidence. Most innocent people express shock, confusion, or emotional breakdown when accused of murder. Sheila's immediate denial seemed rehearsed, as if she had anticipated this moment for years. The arrest attracted significant media attention throughout Connecticut and beyond. Anna Lisa's case became a symbol of how cold cases could be resurrected through persistent investigation and advancing technology. Local news stations interviewed Harbor Landing residents, who expressed relief mixed with shock that a killer had lived among them for a decade. "I saw her in the grocery store hundreds of times," one neighbor commented. "She seemed so normal, so professional. It's terrifying to think what people can hide." Sheila's booking photo revealed none of the emotional distress typical of murder suspects. She appeared composed, almost resigned, as if the arrest was an expected inconvenience rather than life-altering catastrophe. Detective Sullivan felt complex emotions as he watched Sheila being processed into the system. Relief that Anna Lisa's family would finally see justice mixed with frustration that the arrest had taken so long to achieve. The community response was overwhelmingly supportive of law enforcement's persistence. Anna Lisa's parents issued a statement thanking everyone who had refused to let their daughter's case disappear into the archives of unsolved crimes. The trial date was set for September 2012, giving both sides 6 months to prepare for a legal battle that would determine whether 10 years of investigation would result in justice or disappointment. The trial of Sheila Davalloo began on September 17, 2012, in a Stamford courthouse packed with media, community members, and Anna Lisa's family. Judge Patricia Williams presided over proceedings that would determine whether circumstantial evidence could deliver justice for a decade-old murder. Prosecutor David Chen's opening statement painted Sheila as a woman whose intelligence and professional success masked dangerous obsession. He outlined how jealousy had motivated murder and how technological deception had nearly enabled the perfect crime. The defendant used her intellect to plan Anna Lisa Raymundo's murder, then used her voice to misdirect the investigation, Chen told the jury. For 10 years, she believed she had committed the perfect crime. "Today, we prove that justice delayed is not justice denied," defense attorney Robert Martinez countered. By attacking the prosecution's reliance on circumstantial evidence and technological analysis, he argued that Sheila's workplace behavior represented normal colleague relationships, not criminal obsession. "The prosecution wants you to convict someone based on assumptions, coincidences, and voice analysis that cannot account for individual speech variations," Martinez argued. "Suspicion is not proof, and doubt is not evidence." The courtroom atmosphere was tense but respectful. Anna Lisa's parents sat in the front row, their faces showing the strain of 10 years waiting for this moment. Behind them, colleagues from Purdue Pharma and Harbor Landing neighbors filled the gallery. Judge Williams established strict guidelines for media coverage and courtroom behavior, ensuring that sensational aspects of the case wouldn't overshadow legal procedure. The trial would be decided on evidence, not emotion. As jury selection concluded, both sides prepared for a legal battle that would test whether circumstantial proof could overcome the presumption of innocence in a case that had captivated Connecticut for a decade. The most dramatic moment of the trial came when Prosecutor Chen played the anonymous 911 call for the jury. The courtroom fell silent as the disguised voice filled the air, claiming a man was attacking someone and pleading for help. "Listen carefully to the caller's voice," Chen instructed the jury. "Notice how controlled she sounds despite claiming to witness brutal violence. Notice her sophisticated vocabulary and complete sentences." Dr. Jennifer Walsh took the stand to explain voice analysis technology and her conclusions about the caller's identity. Using audio enhancement equipment, she demonstrated how vocal patterns remained consistent even when someone attempted to disguise their voice. The fundamental frequency, speech rhythm, and linguistic markers all match Sheila Davalou's natural speaking voice, Dr. Walsh testified. The probability that these recordings represent different speakers is less than 5%. Defense attorney Martinez challenged the reliability of voice analysis, arguing that stress, poor audio quality, and technological limitations created too much uncertainty for criminal conviction. Voice analysis is not DNA evidence, Martinez argued during cross-examination. Human speech varies based on emotion, health, time of day, and dozens of other factors that this technology cannot account for. The jury's reaction to hearing the 911 call was visible. Several jurors shifted uncomfortably as they listened to what prosecutors claimed was Sheila's voice directing police attention toward a fictional male attacker. Prosecutor Chen played audio samples of Sheila's voice from police interviews, asking jurors to compare speech patterns and vocal characteristics. The similarities were striking, even to untrained listeners. The voice evidence became the prosecution's strongest weapon, transforming abstract suspicion into tangible proof that Sheila had participated in misdirecting the investigation of Anna Lisa's murder. Prosecutor Chen methodically exposed the emotional triangle that had motivated murder. Through witness testimony and documented evidence, he revealed how Sheila's obsession with Nira Ghulam had escalated from workplace interest to deadly jealousy. The defendant created an elaborate fantasy where she and Nira would develop a romantic relationship, Chen explained to the jury. Anna Lisa represented the only obstacle to that fantasy becoming reality. Colleagues testified about Sheila's unusual interest in Nira's schedule, her volunteer efforts to work closely with him, and her detailed questions about his relationship with Anna Lisa. The testimony painted a picture of someone whose professional competence masked dangerous fixation. Dr. Peterson described finding Sheila in Nira's laboratory after hours, claiming she was delivering materials that could have been delivered during normal business hours. Security footage confirmed this pattern of behavior throughout late 2002. She knew more about his projects than his research assistants, Dr. Peterson testified. It felt like mentoring at first, then it became uncomfortable supervision. Paul Christos provided the most damaging testimony about Sheila's behavior at home. He described her obsessive research into Nira's background, her detailed questions about Anna Lisa's work, and her apparent knowledge of their relationship dynamics. She talked about them constantly. Paul testified, Anna Lisa this, Nira that. It felt like she was more invested in their relationship than they were. Defense attorney Martinez argued that workplace collaboration often created close professional relationships that could be misinterpreted as personal obsession. The prosecution is criminalizing normal colleague behavior, Martinez argued. Interest in coworkers' projects and schedules is common in pleasing research environments. The jury faced the challenge of distinguishing between professional interest and dangerous fixation that had culminated in murder. Defense attorney Robert Martinez's cross-examination strategy focused on undermining the circumstantial nature of the prosecution's evidence. He challenged each piece of proof individually, arguing that alternative explanations could account for Sheila's behavior. Taking a personal day from work is not evidence of murder, Martinez argued. Millions of people call in sick without committing crimes. He questioned the reliability of witness memories from events that occurred over 10 years earlier, suggesting that time had distorted recollections and influenced testimony. Human memory is notoriously unreliable, Martinez explained to the jury. People remember what they think they saw, not necessarily what actually happened. Martinez particularly attacked the voice analysis evidence, bringing in competing experts who testified about the limitations of audio identification technology. These witnesses argued that voice analysis lacked the precision of DNA or fingerprint evidence. Voice identification cannot reach the certainty required for criminal conviction, defense expert Dr. Robert Chen testified. Too many variables affect human speech patterns to support definitive identification. The defense also presented character witnesses who described Sheila as a dedicated scientist, loving wife, and respected colleague. They portrayed her as someone incapable of the calculated violence required for premeditated murder. However, Martinez's strategy faced a significant challenge when the prosecution introduced evidence of Sheila's attack on her husband Paul. The pattern of knife violence and deceptive explanation undermined defense claims about her character. This defendant has already demonstrated her capacity for violence, disguised as something innocent, Prosecutor Chen reminded the jury during redirect examination. The defense's approach required jurors to accept that multiple suspicious elements were merely coincidental rather than components of a murder plot that had nearly succeeded. After 3 days of deliberation, the jury returned with a verdict that brought 10 years of uncertainty to its conclusion. The four-person stood as Judge Williams asked for their decision on the charge of first-degree murder. We find the defendant, Sheila Davalloo, guilty. Anna Lisa's parents embraced each other silently, their faces showing relief mixed with the exhaustion of a decade-long wait for justice. Behind them, supporters from Purdue Pharma and Harbor Landing expressed quiet satisfaction that persistence had overcome deception. Sheila showed no visible reaction to the verdict. She sat motionless as Judge Williams thanked the jury for their service and scheduled sentencing for the following month. Detective Sullivan felt the complex emotions of successful case closure, relief that Anna Lisa's family finally had answers mixed with frustration that justice had taken so long to achieve. The verdict validated 10 years of refusing to let the case disappear into cold storage. Prosecutor Chen addressed media outside the courthouse, emphasizing how technological advancement and investigative persistence had delivered justice despite the passage of time. This verdict proves that even the most carefully planned crimes leave evidence that can eventually be discovered, Chen stated. Anna Lisa Raymundo's family deserved answers, and today they received them. The community response was overwhelmingly positive. Local news coverage described the verdict as vindication for everyone who had refused to accept that Anna Lisa's killer would never face consequences. Defense attorney Martinez announced plans to appeal, arguing that circumstantial evidence and voice analysis technology hadn't met the burden of proof required for murder conviction. The guilty verdict marked the end of Base C, the investigation phase, but the beginning of the consequence phase for someone who had nearly committed the perfect crime. On November 8, 2012, exactly 10 years after Anna Lisa's murder, Judge Patricia Williams delivered Sheila Davalloo's sentence in a courtroom filled with the same gravity that had marked the entire trial. The defendant's crimes represent a fundamental violation of trust and human decency, Judge Williams began. The evidence demonstrates calculated planning, sophisticated deception, and a complete disregard for human life. The judge sentenced Sheila to 50 years in prison without possibility of parole for 25 years, ensuring she would spend the majority of her remaining life behind bars. The sentence combined the murder conviction with her previous conviction for attempting to kill her husband Paul. This court cannot restore Anna Lisa Raymundo to her family, Judge Williams continued, but it can ensure that the defendant never again has the opportunity to harm innocent people. Anna Lisa's mother addressed the court during victim impact testimony, her voice steady but filled with 10 years of accumulated grief. Anna Lisa was building a career dedicated to helping people heal through medical research, she said. The defendant stole that future not just from Anna Lisa, but from everyone who might have benefited from her work. The emotional weight of the moment was palpable. Anna Lisa's father spoke about the decade of unanswered questions, sleepless nights, and the gradual acceptance that they might never know who killed their daughter. Today brings closure, but it cannot bring back our Anna Lisa, he said. We hope this conviction prevents other families from experiencing our pain. Sheila declined to make any statement before sentencing, maintaining the same composed demeanor she had shown throughout the trial. Her silence preserved the mystery of her motivations while confirming the jury's conclusion about her guilt. The sentencing marked the formal end of Connecticut's most persistent cold case investigation, transforming a decade-old mystery into a completed chapter of criminal justice. In the months following Sheila's sentencing, the Connecticut State Police reviewed their cold case procedures to identify lessons learned from Anna Lisa's investigation. The case became a model for how technological advancement could resurrect seemingly impossible cases. Detective Sullivan, now promoted to lieutenant, established new protocols for preserving audio evidence and maintaining voice analysis capabilities. The success in Anna Lisa's case demonstrated how emerging technologies could solve crimes that had frustrated investigators for years. "This case proves we should never give up on seeking justice," Sullivan told a conference of law enforcement professionals. "Time and technology can overcome even the most sophisticated attempts at deception." The Purdue Pharma facility implemented enhanced security measures and employee assistance programs designed to identify workplace stress before it escalated into violence. Anna Lisa's colleagues established a memorial research fund that would continue her work in pharmaceutical development. Paul Christos divorced Sheila while she awaited trial, seeking to rebuild his life after discovering his wife was a murderer. His testimony had been crucial in establishing Sheila's capacity for violence and deception. Media coverage of the case inspired other jurisdictions to reinvestigate cold cases using advanced voice analysis technology. Several departments reported breakthrough results in cases that had been dormant for decades. The Harbor Landing apartment complex installed a memorial plaque recognizing Anna Lisa's contributions to medical research. Residents used the dedication ceremony to process their complex emotions about living so close to a killer for 10 years without knowing. The case became required reading in criminal justice programs throughout New England, illustrating how patient investigation combined with technological advancement could deliver justice even when traditional evidence collection failed. On a quiet November evening in 2013, exactly 11 years after Anna Lisa's murder, Harbor Landing residents gathered for a candlelight vigil that transformed grief into community healing. Anna Lisa's parents traveled from Massachusetts to participate in the memorial service. The vigil represented more than remembrance. It marked the community's transition from uncertainty to closure. For over a decade, residents had lived with the knowledge that someone among them was a killer. Now they could finally process their experience without fear. Anna Lisa represents all the potential that violence steals from the world. Her former colleague, Dr. Peterson, said during the memorial service, "But justice restored gives meaning to our loss." The candlelight illuminated faces that reflected complex emotions, relief, sadness, gratitude, and determination. Children who had grown up hearing whispered conversations about the unsolved murder could finally understand why their parents had been so protective. Detective Sullivan attended the vigil, understanding that his role in Anna Lisa's case had been part of something larger than criminal investigation. Cold cases represented promises made to families who deserved answers, regardless of how long those answers took to emerge. Anna Lisa's photograph stood surrounded by flowers and candles, her Harvard diploma visible in the background. The image captured both her academic achievements and the warmth that colleagues remembered: intelligence paired with genuine kindness. The vigil concluded with a moment of silence that felt like collective exhale. Harbor Landing could finally release the tension that had defined the community since November 8, 2002. The fear was gone, replaced by the knowledge that justice, though delayed, had not been denied. As candles flickered in the evening breeze, residents walked home through streets that felt safe again. Anna Lisa Raymundo's case became a landmark in Connecticut criminal justice, demonstrating how persistence, technology, and community support could overcome even the most sophisticated attempts at perfect crimes. The investigation's 10-year timeline proved that justice operates on its own schedule, arriving when evidence and determination finally converge. The voice analysis technology that identified Sheila as the anonymous caller revolutionized cold case investigation throughout New England. Police departments invested in audio enhancement equipment and forensic linguistics training, recognizing how voices could provide identification when traditional evidence failed. Sheila Davalew's conviction validated the investigative principle that criminals inevitably leave traces of their presence, even when they believe they have eliminated all evidence. Her intelligence and professional competence had nearly enabled the perfect murder, but hubris led to the phone call that ultimately convicted her. For Anna Lisa's family, the resolution brought peace rather than celebration. Their daughter's killer would spend decades in prison, but no sentence could restore the life that jealousy had stolen. They found comfort in knowing that Anna Lisa's case would help other families seeking justice for their own losses. The broader lesson transcended criminal justice, showing how communities could heal from violence through patience, support, and the collective refusal to accept that some questions would never be answered. Harbor Landing's experience proved that even the most secure environments could harbor danger, but also demonstrated how truth eventually emerges when people refuse to stop seeking it. Anna Lisa's legacy lived on through the research fund established in her memory, ensuring that her dedication to healing others would continue. Through the work of future scientists committed to making the world better.